Hey there guys, what is going on? Today we are taking a look at a comparison video between the AK47 and of course the Fara 83 in Cold War right now. There are of course balance changes coming with the mid-season update, so keep that in mind. If they do drop, these weapons might change. But we have featured both of these class setups in videos previously this week, so if you haven't checked those out, make sure you do check out the top right. They will be giving you links to those videos. But just before we do get into it here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. As I said, there is loads of content coming up in the mid-season update in Season 3, and that does drop on May the 20th, so you don't miss out on any of that. Keep in mind that all the stats that we're going to be reading off and comparing here today are going to be using these particular class setups with these various attachments that we have chosen. So if there are numbers that look a little bit funny off the base numbers, just know that we are using specific class setups here to judge these weapons side by side, as these are the preferred class setups for me when I do use these weapons, and I would recommend them to you as well. Of course, the categories that we are looking at here today involve like recoil control, we've got reload speed, we've got aim down sight speed, we've got time to kill, we've got damage range, we've got all the lovely statistics that you could think of here. And these weapons are actually way more close together than you probably think here, but let's just start comparing them side by side here. The first stat that we are going to be taking a look at here today and comparing the AK47 and the Fara 83 side by side is of course the fire rate. Now, the AK-47 does have a relatively middling fire rate of 600 rounds per minute, and again, this is one of those numbers that does actually equate and equal to a time to kill, so keep that in mind when we do talk about it. And the Fara 83 does have a fire rate of 800 rounds per minute, which does mean it is a slight edge over the AK-47, not too much. These are both fairly middling numbers, they're not super fast, so they're not super slow, so these are fairly middling numbers, but that does award a point to the Fara 83. We got 1-0 here. The next stat that we do have here is the damage numbers, the individual damage numbers per bullet. If we are looking at the AK-47, this is a damage number of 38. If you look at the Fara 83, this is a number of 31, which is definitely lower than this particular number. Now, this does mean the Fara 83 does have a worse damage per bullet than the AK-47, and that gives us a score of 1-all here. So then we use those two numbers to work out our time to kill here, and this is a time to kill that is actually very, very similar. It's funny how these numbers actually work here. The AK-47 does have a 300 millisecond time to kill out to about 70-ish meters or so. Give or take a few meters there, but 300 milliseconds time to kill is really, really fast in this game, and that's pretty much the benchmark you do want to be hitting for the most part to be quite a powerful weapon in Cold War. And the Fire 83 is no slouch in that regard either. Again, it does have a 300 millisecond time to kill out to about 65-ish meters or so, so it does lose out a little bit in that damage range department, but we'll talk about that more in a second. So we can keep the score even here, as a 300 millisecond time to kill in these weapons at the maximum distance is about 60-70 meters or so. Really, really good stuff with these weapons. So that's where they are so similar. The next statistic that we are taking a look at here is, of course, the bullet velocity. Here, this is very, very important as well for hit detection and making your guns feel really normal. The AK-47 does have a bullet velocity with its preferred barrel. Again, keep in mind we are using the preferred class setups with these. And that is, of course, the VDV reinforced barrel. And this does give us a bullet velocity of 612 meters per second. You can use different barrel options, but this does reduce our damage range, making the weapon less powerful overall. So I feel like this is a good number to go with here. And then the Fire 83 does have a ridiculously fast bullet velocity with the Liberator barrel of 1350 meters per second, giving us insanely good hit detection here. This does give us a score of the AK-47 on 1 and the Fire 83 on 2. The next number that we do have here is the damage range. Of course, the AK-47 does have a slight edge here, and I say slight when we'll explain that more in a second. It does have 70 meters of damage range with the VDV reinforced barrel. As I said, this is quite significant for giving us that 300 millisecond time to kill on pretty much anywhere on the map. But the Fire 83 is very, very close behind with about 65 meters of damage range, and that is without a damage range barrel. This is with the Liberator barrel, which only increases our bullet velocity. So it's kind of hard to award a point here because we are actually increasing our damage range with the AK-47 with the VDV reinforced barrel, but we're not actually increasing our range with the Fire 83, and it still has a 65 meter damage range. So I feel like awarding a point here is a bit rough considering we are increasing those stats in a different way. So I feel like a 1-2 score is still fair here. The next stat that we are taking a look at side by side is the reload speed with both of these weapons. The AK-47 does have a reload speed of 2.8 seconds, which is relatively slow for an assault rifle, especially if you are playing those 12v12 playlists like you can see in the background. And then the Fire 83 does have a reload speed of 2.6 seconds. Keep in mind with these class setups, neither of them are using any magazine attachments. And in those 12v12 playlists that have just been introduced, I actually do recommend you do run a magazine attachment. So keep that in mind here. But yeah, with the stock reload speed on both of these weapons, 2.8, Fire 83 is 2.6, which is very, very similar. For all intents and purposes, this is essentially the same. So again, awarding a point for this particular stat is kinda unnecessary. If we again look at the magazine ammo capacity, both of these weapons do share a 30 round base magazine. And again, with these class setups, we aren't actually including a magazine. So if you want to include a magazine, these numbers will of course change. They will go up. They do share different magazines. So It can be a little bit different with the damage here, but magazine ammo capacity stock is 30 rounds, which is just even across the board. That's quite nice. So again, awarding a point here is unnecessary. The next stat that we do have here is the ADS speed, and now we are including the Serpent Wrap, as this is featured in both of the class setups. If you do take like a Guru Elastic Wrap, you are reducing certain stats that we don't necessarily want to reduce, like your shooting movement speed and your sprint to fire speed. So we go with the Serpent Wrap. The AK-47 does have an aim down sight speed with the Serpent Wrap of 225 milliseconds, and the Fara 83 does have an aim down sight speed with the Serpent Wrap of 243 milliseconds. So it is slightly behind in that regard, and that does actually make this weapon worse at close range, so that does give the AK-47 a score, so 2-all now. The next stat that we've got is the sprint out time, which means getting that weapon up after we are sprinting, and these weapons share exactly the same sprint out time, and we are using similar attachments across the board here. And that includes the Serpent Wrap, which does reduce our sprint to fire speed by the same amount on both weapons, and we are using the last stock, which does give us sprint to fire speed. And a sprint out time of 320 milliseconds for both of these weapons is quite fast. Alrighty, so the next stat we are going to be taking a look at here is, of course, the recoil control with both of these weapons. Again, keep in mind this is with a specific class setup, and the recoil controlling attachments are exactly the same here. This is the Spetsnaz Speed Grip, which does give us 15% increase to that horizontal recoil control. We don't have any vertical recoil controlling attachments on this, as it is quite relatively easy to control here. Starting off with the AK-47 at about 10 meters or so, we look at the recoil, and it does look like this, which is, it's actually really easy to control. It's just a slight up and to the left motion. Most of the bullets are centered around this area here. This is very, very easy to control. Again, the recoil control on the Fara 83, we stand 10 meters back again, and we hit that recoil. Keep in mind, again, these are no vertical recoil controlling attachments, and we see here, it does have a little bit more vertical recoil control, but again, this is basically in a straight line up and to the right. It is a little taller than the AK-47, so do keep that in mind. It definitely is worse, but again, this is not something that you're going to struggle to control the recoil on. I guess if we were to give a score, it would go to the AK-47, but again, these recoil control patterns are not actually hard to control at all. So giving another point here is, again, a little unnecessary, as it does feature very, very similar and easy to control recoil patterns. But if we were to give a point, it'd probably go to the AK-47, because you saw that. It is a little bit better here. The next stat that we are taking a look at is a little interesting here. It's not really a statistic at all, but more about attachment choices. Now, the AK-47 does actually have excellent attachment choices for the most part. It has fantastic iron sights, meaning you don't actually have to run an optic here. You can definitely avoid it, you can just leave it off, and that allows us to run extra attachments, and that does include a suppressor. As we have featured in the class setup the other day, this does run a suppressor, which the Fire 83 does not, because it does have to, in my opinion, run a sight, because I really don't like the iron sights on that thing. So being able to run an AK-47 with a suppressor, being able to stay off that minimap is quite powerful in this game, meaning we can stay stealthy, we can combine that with Ghost and Ninja, meaning we are not appearing on the minimap at all, which is very, very strong. And again, as I said, the Fire 83, the iron sights on that are definitely worse than the AK-47. The AK-47 has classic, very strong iron sights. I don't personally prefer the Fara's iron sights, as I think they are a little bulky at the eye bit, where you actually like aim down sight. That bit there is not good for me. It blocks off a lot of the peripherals. So the actual end bit, the actual bit that you look through and you aim your gun at, that's fine. I actually don't mind that. It's not too bad, but I do definitely prefer an optic on the Fire 83. So it's one of those options that kind of feels a little bad to use when you are comparing them exactly side by side. So if we had to give a point for this, for the attachment choices having better iron sights, the AK-47 does probably get a point here. We could call it 3-2, but again, this is definitely personal choice. So you can actually take the sight that we have chosen here in the Microflex LED. You can take that off. You can run a suppressor on this thing. It does change the stats a little bit with the bullet velocity and the damage ranges and everything. But again, these damage ranges, these bullet velocity numbers are quite similar, and they're still quite strong in this case. So it's one of those, it's all personal choice with these attachment choices. So I do really like the AK-47 being able to run that suppressor and not have to worry about a sight. But I think the Fire 83 with that optic of choice being, of course, the Microflex LED gives us a very clear sight picture. It means we can hit those shots super easily. We are unsuppressed, but again, this is a very, very personal choice, and that is what I go with, so keep that in mind here. And that does wrap it up here, guys. It's one of those things where the AK-47 and, of course, the Fire 83 are very, very similar, and you saw that throughout the statistics. Like, there are sections that each of these weapons do excel at, and they are very, very similar for the most part. So this is one of those things where you might have to make your own opinion. Some people will prefer the AK-47. I think I'm more leaning that way at the moment, just because I did drop my first nuke with, of course, the AK-47 very recently. But I still love the Fire 83. It's just the iron sights could probably do with a little bit of work. I don't like the bulky housing thing at the top, but the end iron sight is actually fine. So it's one of those things where it is personal preference and you might have to make your own choice here. So sadly, we haven't come to a conclusion, but that is what it is. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching this one. Make sure you test out these classes and hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming Season 3 content, of course, with the mid-season update. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!